Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to this week's Wonky Wednesday. I want to show you a Japanese folded patchwork technique, which is kind of a follow-on really from last week when we folded a circle to make a hexagon, but in this technique you fold a circle to make a square. So I've started making these with some chambray shirt, that sounds like you're not saying it properly, anyway. And this little piece of cotton in the middle, and you see they're super wonky because I'm rubbish. No, the shirt's quite stretchy in my defence, but anyway, so I'm going to show you how I did this. I'm actually going to demonstrate on this cloth because there's more contrast. And here I want the stitching, apart from the red which shows up, I want the stitching round the blue to be invisible, so obviously that's no use to you at all. And there's a sort of little special stitching technique in the corners I want to make sure you can see clearly. I did think about doing it raw edge, and I did a sample raw edge here. So you'll see when I show you the folding and everything, you fold the edges in. But I didn't like, I mean it's fine here raw edge, but I didn't like the corners. They're quite fragile when you come to join them together, and here you see in the middle it's gone really you know, open and weird. You could, if you really liked the idea of doing raw edge, then just sew a button or something in the middle. But I want to join them together to make something, not a rice bag, but a pouch for a Christmas present. So I wanted it to have more structure. So I'll show you not raw edge and just, you know, tell you if you want to do raw edge, you just miss out a step. So in order to get the sizes correct, I'm going to put a link in the description box, if you click on the little word more, to a handy dandy online tool where you can put in the radius of your circle. You know, a circle has a radius which is from the middle to the edge, and the diameter is straight across. So you either put in the radius of your circle, and then it tells you what size square fits in it, or you put in the size of your square, and it tells you what radius your circle needs to be. So if you go and look at that, it's really super easy. You can do it in inches or centimetres. You just put in the number, so say you want a 3-inch square, you just put in you want your square to be 3 inches, and then it'll tell you what size circle. I thought that was brilliant when I found it. So I have got here for my project, what I did was I went and found something round, which is this Spode sugar bowl, and it measures I wrote it all down, 4.5 inches diameter. Now if you want to find the diameter of something, get your ruler on it and just sort of swivel your ruler until it's the maximum. Do you see what I mean? So the diameter will be the maximum, because you don't want to measure it up here somewhere. That will obviously not give you the correct size. So you just sort of hold your ruler on one side and swing it until it's reading the maximum. Hope that makes sense. So then I just used that. I didn't bother making a template. I just put that on my cloth and drew round it just with a pen on the wrong side of the cloth. So that was 4.5 inches, so I used the calculator which told me that when I took out a seam allowance of 1/4 inch all the way around, that will make it 4 inches, so my square needed to be 2 3/4 inches. So that's what these are. And then in addition to that, so I'll just show you the units here because I've got it all in progress. So here's my circle cut out. I didn't draw the seam allowance on, I'm just going to do it by eye. And then I've turned in the edges with my red stitching. If you didn't want to have this stitching showing, you could baste and then take that out afterwards. So then my square is one of my squares. Will go there. But I want some poof to it, some bit more oomph. Again, it's not essential. I had these little tiny bits of black polyester wadding. I don't even know where they came from. I've had them for years. So I cut squares a 1/4 inch smaller than the cloth square. So my cloth square was 2 3/4 inches, so I cut my wadding at 2.5 inches. And you see that's just left a little 1/8 of an inch-ish, because I didn't cut them very accurately all the way around. So then you just put that behind that, and then you put that on your circle. If you were doing it raw edge, you just, you know, imagine this circle's raw edge, and then you just fold in the 4 sides and put a pin, and then you whip stitch around, and job done. So I'm going to do it from start to finish on the other cloth, which isn't as pretty as this, but yeah, it's just so you could see, and then I'm going to show you how I'm joining them together. But again, it's a lovely little project on the go. If you fancy having another rabbit hole to go down, you know, if you don't have enough projects on the go, you know, in your go bag. So I've cut my circle. This is a slightly different size because I just, you know, went with the size of the scrap. So I drew around my circle and I cut out just by eye 1/4 inch bigger, and then I've got my square ready cut here, and I've got my square of wadding, again you see slightly smaller. So the first thing to do, I'm going to use this dark blue thread in the hope that you can see. This is some vintage darning cotton. It's 4-stranded and it's slightly thinner than embroidery floss, but I've got 2 strands. Let me just put all that away a bit so it doesn't look so messy. Is that better? Less messy for you to look at. While I'm stitching, I'll talk about cloth gate, because we've had some discussion about back cloth, because I asked you. But I'll get going first. So you've got your drawn line, and that's the line that you want to turn your edge in against. So this is the wrong side of the cloth. So I've got a knot in my thread. I'm just going to go up somewhere sort of halfway in that seam allowance and bury my knot inside there. And then I'm just going to kind of fold that against that drawn line. And as you go round, there'll be fullness that you have to ease in, because obviously the circle's bigger out on its outer edge than it is on the inner. But you just want to try and ease that in without making definite pleats. So I just did a running stitch somewhat evenly because it will be visible. If you want to tack it, then obviously it doesn't matter as much. So just fold in a little bit as you go, push it in place with your needle. Get your thread caught around the thing, of course. That hardly happens. I know I say this a lot when you're not watching me, and I think it's because of sitting, you know, sitting here with the contraption above my head and all that. So just easing it in as you go round. And you know, you shouldn't have any difficulty, and don't choose a really thick cloth. I did think about doing it with actual denim. Then I think it would have to be raw edge. Turning the edge then would be too thick. But I found that lovely old soft bit of chambray shirt, and I thought that was just lovely with that little print, that blue with the red. So you just stitch yourself all the way around, and don't gather it in. We're not making a Suffolk puff or anything. You want it to be flat, you don't want to gather the edges, so don't pull your stitches too tight. So I'm just peeping under and looking where my drawn line is and just folding in against it. So that's why it doesn't really matter, as long as your seam allowance isn't too big. You know, if it's not exactly 1/4 inch all the way around, because your drawn line is what keeps you reasonably accurate in the spirit of being wonky and not stressing about it. If you wanted to try the raw edge way, then you just wouldn't do this step. You know, you just cut your circle out, finished size without the seam allowance, and then you'd be ready for the next step. So yeah, I had some very interesting feedback from you. I'm glad I asked, in a way. As suspected, some of you loved the, if you're new here or if you didn't see last Monday's video, I asked about, sometimes I stitch here on this green cloth, and this is what I've been using mostly for, you know, the whole past year that I've been doing this, because it was all I had really that was thick enough, because it's upholstery fabric, to lay flat as a surface. I didn't like using my cutting mat or just the wooden desk, because when I put things down on it, it makes a clattering noise, and yeah, I just didn't think it was nice for you either to hear things clattering about, or for me. So anyway, I had this bit of cloth, so this is what I've been using because it's plainish as a backdrop. But I appreciate that a lot of the work that I do is sort of grungy neutral colours, and maybe doesn't show up very well. So I'm just, you know, nobody's complained. No, you know, you're all lovely. Nobody's really complained about anything. And so I asked on Monday, having made a couple of videos on my kitchen table, which has got an old quilt on, did people have a preference? And many of you said you didn't mind. You know, you had no preference at all. It was up to me kind of thing. Do you see there? There's a pleat trying to form. Now that's not a problem as long as it's within the inside of the circle. It might become a problem if it made a proper pleat, because then it will make a little point, which you would then see. Do you see? Do you see on the other side? So just be aware of that and try and ease it in somewhat evenly. You can get rid of that little point a bit when you're doing the whip stitching, but you know, don't stress over it. I'm just pointing out things that might bother some of you, and I hope that I can help you avoid them. Yeah, so some of you said, oh, you love the kitchen table quilt. Some of you were not so keen on it. No, not that you were not keen on the quilt, but it's a very old and wonky quilt, and I can fully understand how it might bother some of you to, you know, see that the points don't match and all that kind of thing. Would have bothered me at one time. But more importantly than that, I think because it's a busy background, it makes it harder to see what I'm doing. And quite a few people said that. So I think that the answer is that I will try and be aware of the project that I'm making, the colour of it, how closely you need to see what I'm doing. You know, if it's just cosy kitchen stitching kind of thing, and I just need to show you a bit and then, you know, carry on stitching and chatting, and maybe you're not even watching anymore, then it, you know, maybe I can do that there, or maybe I'll look for other things that I've got that I could use. You know, it's just, I think it's because the end of the year is approaching and you just kind of do a mental review of things, but it's no biggie. It's, you know, I'm not stressing over it. I don't want any of you to stress over it, or, you know, I asked for your opinion, and there's no need to apologise for giving your opinion, especially when it's asked for. I shall take it all on board. Like I said on Monday, I can't obviously please everybody, because if you say point blank you prefer the green and someone else says point blank they prefer the quilt, then I can't do half and half. There was another very good idea from Amy. Hello, Amy. Who said maybe because I've got the Wonky Wednesdays and the Mondays and the journaling videos, which started last Friday, maybe I could sort of do a different surface for each so that they have their own environment kind of thing, and I thought that was a good idea. So you see, I'm coming back to the beginning now. So the clock's going to bong. Only 2. I'm stitching early because it gets dark so late. Sorry, I'm stitching early in the day because it gets dark so early. So I'm going to just fit one more stitch in there just so it looks somewhat even from the right side. Just have a check my stitch is going to be okay. And so that is my circle basted down. So I'm going to take a little back stitch just into the seam allowance, and then I'm going to put my needle through under the seam allowance and cut off my tail. So you can either, you know, if you have a project in mind and you need to make so many, if you wanted to make a rice bag, and they would make a fabulous rice bag, then you would need 4 panels like this, so you'd need 16 units, and then something else for the bottom, probably just a plain piece I'd put on the bottom. So you could do all your 16 circles and, you know, and do it like that, or you could make every one. It's just how you like to work. But I'm obviously just going to do this one. So then I'm going to use the same thread, because I'll be stitching, you know, the stitches you'll see will be on the pale blue, so I hope it shows up okay. So now I'm going to get my square with my bit of wadding centralised behind it, and I'm going to lay it on And I'm going to see straight away that I've cut it too big. Oh, that was silly of me. Cut it the wrong size. I'm going to have to make it smaller. Now the wadding's the right size, so I'm just going to use the square, the wadding. I've cut it 1/4 of an inch too big. That's just shoddy measuring, not paying attention. So I'm going to use the wadding as a template to cut the square down. And then I'm going to cut the wadding down, but I don't want to do that with the snippies because it will blunt them. And I don't know where the blunties are. Oh, there they are. There we go, that's good. And now I've got the blunties. So now I'm just going to shave about 1/4 of an inch off 2 sides of the wadding. So that'll leave me 1/8 of an inch all the way round. There we go. Hopefully. More or less. It's just if you have the wadding right up to the edge, it's bulky when when you make the turn. I just found it handier to. So now do you see that, I hope you can see, that the points of the square are just inside the edge of the circle. And look out for that if you go and use that calculator. If it says your square needs to be 3.1 inches or something, just make it 3 inches. Because if it's slightly inside, that's better than if it goes exactly to the edge. And I would say cut 1 and check it. Don't cut your whole 16 in case, you've rounded up or rounded down and it's slightly wrong. Do you see what I mean? So that's just sitting, I'll put it on my hand and hold it up. That's just sitting ever so slightly inside the edge of that pale blue circle. And it's even, each corner is sitting an equal amount inside the edge. It's not that there's a big gap here and no gap there. So just pay a little bit of attention to that, but get a pin and just put a pin through the middle of everything, right through. And then I'm going to fold in opposite sides first. And be careful to fold against your square and that you don't fold the edge of the square as well, if you see what I mean. And then you just want to sort of look at that curve and make sure it's reasonably symmetrical, because on some of these, I'll show you, I was not paying attention. I was doing it on my knee. I was watching a YouTube video of Machtelt, hello Machtelt, on Daily Dose of Paper, folding her pages for her journal, for the slow journaling project. And you see, look, that's completely off. But I don't mind wonky. But if you do, just pay a little bit of attention here when you do your folding in, that you've got it somewhat symmetrical. And you'll see that the corners here, the corners of the square, that it arcs up. And that's how you get that shape in a minute. So once I've got that folded how I like it, I'm going to put a pin. I'm going to turn it the other way and do the same on the opposite sides, and I think it is better to do opposite sides first rather than working your way round. The same thing again, just have a look and make sure it's pleasing to you. And this would be a great scrappy project, and it would be a lovely scrappy project if you used all the same background cloth and then different scraps in the middle as well. It's kind of reminiscent of cathedral windows, although it's a completely different way of making it. But I just thought of it, having done when we folded the circle last week to make the hexagon. So then here, when you fold this in, you'll see that you get that lovely shape in the corner. Get a pin. And the sun's trying to come out. It's been absolutely torrential rain all morning. That's still a bit big there, I'll just tuck it in. And some friends who live not very far away, like an hour or so away from me, have reported that they've had snow. And also Alison, who lives in Wales, I think. Hello, Alison. She also said there was snow in Wales. But we've only had rain. I don't think the snow's settled, at least not where my friends are. Right, so I'm not pinning the corners now, I'll sort them out when I stitch them, but I've got my 4 sides pinned. And so I've got still got to keep my 2 strands of thread, so you can see if you wanted to, I would say go down to one strand of thread, or just some normal sewing thread, and match it, or use a neutral colour, because if you don't want the whip stitches to show. Now I will start somewhere along one side. I don't want to start in the corner, because the corners, you want them to be as neat as you can, and you don't want to be messing about there with knots and finishing your thread or so on. So it's better off to start somewhere, somewhere along the edge. So I've come up through the fold of the circle, and then I'm going to go down. That's one of Stella's friends barking, so she's having a little woof back. Sorry about that. So I'm going to go down just under the edge of the fold of the pale blue, and then come through maybe 1/8 of an inch or a bit more along into the fold. This is just whip stitching or blind stitching if you don't know. But because I've got wadding in, it's pretty easy to be careful and not have it showing on the back. So I'm just whip stitching through into this dark green cloth and into the wadding, and not all the way through to the back. And then I'm just going to do that. I'm probably going to do them a bit bigger than maybe I normally would, and I always try and get slightly under the edge of the curve, just to have the stitches as small as possible. And then as you approach the corner, probably do one more stitch, then I'll show you. You then just want to audition where those two are going to start meeting. And there's a little pleat in the corner. It'll be okay. So do you see where those 2 bits of pale blue are just starting to meet by my slightly grubby thumbnails? Sorry about that. I've been messing about with ink and stuff. So you want to keep doing your blind stitching until you get to that point where they meet. So I think I can do a couple more stitches. I don't find it handy to put a pin through there, because it's such a little place, and the pin, even the little applique pins, are a bit big. I'm just going to do a couple more stitches and look again, and yeah, I'm pretty much there. So now I'm going to do ladder stitch. Now if you do this in a matching thread, it will virtually disappear. You're going to see it because I want you to see it. So I'm coming out here on the left, on my left. I'm going to go straight across to the opposite fold, and just go in maybe not even 1/8 of an inch, and I'm only into the fold. It doesn't matter if you go into the undercloth as well, as long as you don't go right through to the back. And then I'm coming forward again about 1/8 of an inch. This is if you don't know how to do ladder stitch. And then I'll pull that through, and you don't have to snug that up yet. I'll just snug it up a bit so that I know my placement's right. And then you jump back, so you're coming in a straight line across that join, and go in, and then you go forward again a little bit, but staying as close to the edge of the cloth as you dare. And again, and then jump back again, and go forward. And so you see I've got those 3 little ladder stitches, like a little ladder. You see why the name. And then if you give that a gentle tug, that will all close up, and if those stitches weren't a contrast, they would disappear, and that corner's nicely closed up. Do you see? And so now I'm going to do my last stitch across, but as I come in to this fold, I'm going to just push my needle through all the folds, making sure I don't go right through, so that I come back out ready to start blind stitching the last side. I'm going to look on the back and check I'm not all the way through, and I'm not. And then just pull that last stitch up, but not so tight that your corner gets pulled out of. Can you see that? I hope you can see that. I think you can. So you see I've got, it looks like a little ladder, but if you did it in a contrasting thread, if you did it in a matching thread, like I've done on here, you'll see that you hardly see it, and it just closes that corner up nicely. So I'm going to work my way around doing that everywhere. That stitch is a bit loose where I did the running stitch, but you know, we're wonky. Obviously if you'd basted, then I would say, you know, instead of doing the running stitch, go through from the front with your knot and finish off on the front, because then it makes it much easier when you want to take your basting stitches out to see the ends, and then use a contrasting thread so that you can see it. You know, it just makes it easier to pull it out. The invisible baste, I guess you could do, but you'd have to then stitch from the right side. Getting caught around the corners. And that is all there is to it, really. Let's try to get that pin away because it's being annoying. I mean, I suppose I don't even really have to finish this one, but because I can show you with the other ones. I'll just maybe do one more corner. Yeah, since we're getting close to the end of November, I thought it was maybe time I started thinking about Christmas presents, and so that's why I started that, thinking that'll make a nice little pouch, and then I can put gifts in it for the person. So that I've just got to the point where the two folds meet. Jump across, go forward a bit, jump back, go forward a bit, and on this size 3 seems to be the right number of stitches, and then I'll make the last one when I pull the needle through and work my way through to there. So I expect many of you who've been here a while maybe making Christmas presents, and many of you will be making Christmas presents whether you've been here a while or not, because I assume that if you're here you're a crafter or a creative person, and it's nice to make handmade gifts. But maybe some of you are making pouches, and maybe some of you are making rice bags. I think it's lovely if you're going to buy bits and bobs for people for Christmas, or for any, you know, whatever festivals you celebrate, to give them in something. And I know not everybody appreciates handmade. I'm sure we've all got people in our lives, or have known people who don't appreciate it. Well, don't do handmade for those people, I would say. Don't set yourself up for the heartache. So anyway, I just said I didn't need to finish doing this, and now I'm finishing doing it. Because it is, I'm finding it a bit ugly. I think I'm going to stop there. I don't think it's the most pleasing colour combination, but I wanted you to be able to see, and especially those fiddly little corners, you know, the ladder stitch, which makes them look reasonably neat. Maybe some of you do like that. It's a personal thing, isn't it? It's just this colour is okay, but this really bright blue is not really me. So I'm going to put that to one side. I'm probably going to deconstruct it when I'm done. I do want my number 9 needle off there, and put it back in the scraps from whence it came. But I hope that was clear and that you could see what you needed to see. So I'll just show you this again, this raw edge one. This one, when I've got a circle here, can I show you with this? So I've got this circle and this square. I haven't got a bit of wadding big enough, so we'll do it without the wadding. So you see this, if you're going to do it raw edge, and this is not high contrast, but it's prettier, isn't it? It's prettier. So you just lay that on in the same way and fold your sides in, all in exactly the same way. And this goes much, you know, much quicker and easier, which was why I tried to do it raw edge, but You know, if you come up with a solution for those little tiny points, then please share in the comments. But it just goes down to nearly no cloth. So, like I said, I think it would have to be not for something structural like a pouch or a rice bag. If it was a flat cloth, then all those little junctions you could sew a button over. Or if you just wanted to make a little 4-patch for your journal or something, you know, that would be absolutely fine. Raw edge. So I just did that, and then rather than whip stitching, so you know, simple, rather than whip excuse me, rather than whip stitching, I just did running stitch in the red, as you can see, about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And again, I didn't go through to the back, so I just did my running stitch through the top, this bit, this cloth, and the wadding. And then when I join them together, I'm going to show you it's exactly the same as joining the others together. So that's if you want to have a go at it raw edge. I do, you know, like I say, I like all this, and I don't mind that because I just put a button there. But it was just these if it was going to be, you know, have to a pouch or something that you were going to use. So anyway, I think I've whittled on enough about raw edge or not. So I've got these made. And I've got these made, and I've put them in 2 pairs, and now I'll join them into a 4. And in terms of my pouch, now you can see my shirt, by the way, sorry, interrupt myself. My shirt, this is all one shirt, but you see it's very pale here and it's much darker in other areas, and that's just the charm of it, I think. But if you've got a bit of cloth like that, it is worth playing a bit with the placement to see if there's a way that you like the look of better. You know, if you have a cloth that's got a pattern in it. I mean, I went for plain for the background, and you know. But the joy of this, I think, apart from they're fun to make once you get into it, is when you put them together. You see the curves make these lovely petal shapes. So now I've got this 4-petaled flower going to form when I stitch these 2 together. And it's those secondary patterns you get. And that's why I think I like the background cloth to be all the same cloth. But, you know, experiment if you feel so inclined. Where's my needle? I've got a bit of blue. Is that long enough? So I did this running stitch around my circles here. And I've prepared them all whilst watching Machtot, like I said, in 2 strands of red floss to pick up the red in the print. And then my whip stitching I did in 1 strand of pale blue embroidery floss. Could also have been sewing cotton, but it was just the perfect colour. But my joining stitches I'm going to use 2 strands, just so it's a bit stronger. And of course the lovely thing about this, because it is quilt as you go in a sense, well it is quilt as you go, is that you don't have to back it or anything afterwards or line it, you know, it's the other side will be like that. So yeah, it would make a fabulous rice bag. You'd have to sew the tabs on in some way. You'd have to, you know, because normally when you make a rice bag, if you've never made one, if there are people out there who haven't yet made a rice bag, the little tabs that the drawstring goes through get trapped between the outer and the lining. So if you did it on here, you'd have to stitch them on somehow. Anyway, I'm not doing that, I'm making a pouch. So I'm going to have a square pouch. So I'm going to have 4 like this, and another 4, and stitch them at the sides, and then I'm going to have another 2 that fold over, and then put a button or something to close it. That's my plan, if that makes sense to you. So I'll do 2 4 patches, and then I'll join them at the sides and at the bottom, so it's like a pocket, and then I'll make another 2 of these and stitch them to the back of the back one, which then will fold over. So it'll just be a simple little pouch with some kind of closure. I'll show you it next week when I've made it. But these, I'm just going to put them right sides together, and this is again as if English paper piecing, same as we did last week with the hexagons, only I'm going to do it right sides together. I'm going to make sure the 2 points where I'm going to start stitching match, and make sure the middle matches, and if they don't, I'm going to make them. but they kind of do. Oh, here comes Fred. Not in there, Boo. You coming to say hello? I think he's coming to say hello. Here he comes. You can see his paw. Come in. It's a bit close. Doesn't really work, Fred. Don't knock the thing. You got a close up of his back. You're going to sit down? Are you going to stand there? Oh, now Stella's coming. Sorry about that. That's his tail flicking the camera. Fred, you have to settle down. You can't just stand there because that's not nice for the people or me. He doesn't care. Come on. Sit down or move on. Those are your choices. No, he's going to have to be moved on. Good boy. Whoops, sorry about that. Say goodbye. Bye-bye. Down you go. There's a good lad. Yeah, well, you saw some of him, not his face, but, you know. And that's Stella now coming to say hello. So I'm going to, first of all, bury my knot. I'm going to go through this corner somewhere and hope I can pop my knot in. Maybe I'll trim that tail a bit first. It's a bit long. There we go. It's popped in, and then I'm going to do a little back stitch on the spot just to make sure it's secure. I'm just a bit more careful when I'm making things that, you know, I mean, it's a pouch, so it's not going to get potatoes carried in it or anything. But did I have it a certain way? But still, you don't want it coming apart, do you? And I'm just going to whip stitch, just taking little bites. And when I whip stitch, I keep my stitches straight. So I come straight across. You can't now see because there's no contrast, but my thread is coming straight across and going in the other side in the corresponding spot, and then I angle my needle forward. I know other people do slanty whip stitches. I do them straight. There's no right or wrong way, it's just whatever you find most comfortable. And Stella's now got her yak milk bone, which is still going strong. So sorry for the chompy noises. And yeah, I'm glad the rain stopped. We haven't actually been for a walk yet today. So when I finish this, we'll do that then before it's dark, because it was such torrential rain. I mean, if it was going to be torrential rain all day, then obviously I would just put my boots and my coat on and go for a walk, but Stella gets absolutely wet through then as well. I keep thinking I might get her a little raincoat, because I see her little friends with little raincoats. And she's now got her bandana, which she loves wearing and she wears every day. So maybe it's time to extend her wardrobe. Maybe I could make her a raincoat. I don't know how I'd make something waterproof though. I don't think it would be very nice to stitch something waterproof. I've got a wax cotton coat. I wonder if I could get her one that, you know, doggy version that's not a lot of money. So we match. Or is that completely ridiculous? And just because of her curly coat, you know, if she gets wet through it, it's not good for her skin. She's got this allergy, which I've mentioned before. So I'm joking about the fashion aspect of it. It is actually practical. And then she's not coming back into the house. And jumping on the sofa wet through, like she did yesterday. No, the day before. I gave her a bath with her special shampoo. Right, so now I've come to the middle. And I'm just going to, I go into the right-hand side of the right-hand patch, and then I do a little diagonal stitch across into the left-hand patch, if that makes sense. And then I just pick up the new patch, you know, the one I haven't started attaching yet, and then that, I just find that little diagonal stitch just cinches it in. I hope that made sense. This is so lovely to stitch after last Wonky Wednesday's cloth, which, if you remember, was that Dutch chintz. Although it was beautiful cloth, it was not really nice to hand stitch. There was something else I wanted to talk to you about, but I can't remember what it was now. I talked about the cloth. Oh yes, I think it was on Monday I said that next year there will be a new weekly project, and it'll be a little bit different next year. I'm not going to just carry on with the stitch journal. It will still be very much within the slow stitch ethos, because that is just what I do. And elements of Wonky Wednesday will continue as well, and there'll be the same amount of videos. I'm being a bit cryptic, but slightly differently arranged, so I hope you like what I've come up with. I always pay attention to what people say in the comments, you know, your feedback, and what people say in the private Facebook group. And like I said, with regards to the cloth, I can't obviously please everybody, because if you have opposite requests, then it's impossible. But I do take it all on board, because as far as I'm concerned, we're a community, and you know, it's important what you all think as well. Right, so I've come to the end. Oh yeah, and the other thing I wanted to just completely clearly state is that all the videos that are currently up on my channel will stay up on my channel. I don't have any plans to take them down at the end of the year or anything, because I know there are people coming in now that want to do the Monday project, for example, from start to finish under their own time. But so I see no reason to take any of them down. So I've got to the end. I did a couple of stitches on the spot, and now I've got my needle going between the layers. Check I haven't come out on the other side. And I always do that rather than just taking a couple of stitches and cutting. Just thread your thread through a ½ inch or so away, and then just pull it up under a bit of tension, and then snip, being careful not to snip your cloth, and then your tail will pop in, and that just makes it less likely to pull out. So there we go. I quite like that those little running stitches show there as well on the other side. So it's a nice sturdy but soft little thing, and it makes this lovely secondary pattern, and I think that's going to be a super cute little pouch. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you have a go, and just let me know if you try raw edge or you try folded, and you know, your thoughts on the matter. And with or without wadding, you know, there's many different ways you can play with it, but don't forget the calculator, which I'll put a link, like I said. If you click on the word more, there'll be a link there in the description box underneath. So you can, if you don't have circle templates or compasses to draw one on cardboard, you can just go around your house, find something that you think is, you know, about the right size, measure it, put that into the calculator, and that'll tell you what size squares you need to cut. So anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.